What about now? Do I have sound now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I unplugged my microphone and all of a sudden I have sound. Folks, and we're live. It is Friday, the 5th of December. It is the year of our Lord 2025. It is 11:03 because I showed up and there was no sound. I don't know why there was no sound. My microphone works just fine, and but whatever. I'm in a hotel room. Sometimes there's no sound. And I saw Ava, but I couldn't hear her. And I saw Nastia, but I couldn't hear her. And I assumed that was a problem on their end because they're the ones in a war zone, not me. But then I saw the chat, and the chat informed me that the problem was on my end. And look, we're going to talk about Andriy Yermak. We're going to get interrupted by Ava for the whole hour. It's going to be awesome. But first, I want to tell you how I yesterday turned into a cultural stereotype. Because, as you know, I am in the Bay Area today. I am, um, I am staying. I'm dealing with Silicon Valley people, and I got up in the morning and I decided I chose violence, people. I decided I was going to take my first driverless car. I was going to get in a Waymo and I was going to go to a meeting in Palo Alto from here, from downtown San Francisco to Palo Alto in a driverless car. And then I was going to write about it because I was going to be a cultural stereotype. And I was going to be that guy who tries a new technology that a million people have already tried and then has to write about it because it's different when I do it. And by the way, along the way, I was going to put some poor hapless gig worker out of work because, I could take an Uber, which already put all the taxis out of work. But no, I was going to take that gig worker whose union job got shipped off to China 20 years ago and has been, and I was going to reach into his pocket. And I was going to take the fare out and I was going to give the fare. I'm not making this up, people, to a Silicon Valley startup company that is putting robots behind the wheels of Jaguars, literally of Jags. And so I called a Waymo. And now it would have cost me $100 to get to Palo Alto by Uber. And it cost me $110 to do it by Waymo. So I paid a premium to deprive some gig worker of his income. And I want to tell you also that not only did I pay a premium to do that, it took longer, much longer. The Uber app estimated that it would be like 1 hour and 6 minutes to get to Palo Alto. The Waymo app estimated that it would be 2.5 hours to get to Palo Alto. So I was going to sit in a driverless car, depriving this poor former union worker of his income for 2.5 hours in order to have the satisfaction of being part of the problem. And folks, I did it. I called the Waymo. And you know what? Here's my verdict on Waymo. It's really cool for the first 5 minutes because it's like a driverless car and it actually works. And it does all those cool things. Like you feel like you're driving around in a Predator drone because it, navigates all the human inputs and all those crazy things that human drivers do. And it's like way, way safer than a regular car. And it's kind of awesome that I don't have to be talked to by an anti-Semitic guy who wants to burn down his wife's farm. And all of that is super cool for the first 5 minutes. And then you know what happens? It gets boring because you're stuck in traffic. And there are it's boring because being stuck in traffic is boring even if you're in a crazy robot wheel driving a Jaguar. And I have to say that the Waymo is the prissiest driver I have ever dealt with. It comes to a complete stop at every single stop sign. That is unnecessary and silly. People don't do that, and there's a reason for that, because it's not really marginally safer to come to a complete stop rather than a I totally paused kind of stop. And I have to say that it's really cool technology, and it was really fun to be part of the problem of the de-post-industrialization of America and putting this last group of gig workers finally out of work forever, so that we'll need a universal basic income to keep people alive in this period of time. But on the way back, I took an Uber because it was faster and it was cheaper, and the driver was fine. He didn't talk to me, and there were no anti-Semitic rants. And yeah, then I wrote The Situation column about it, because I am today a cultural stereotype, all of which is a long-winded way of saying that here in San Francisco, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping. It is gonna be a great fucking day. Excuse me, Ava. And you are watching Dogshirt TV, and it is a goddamn revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features is that sometimes we show up and we get to listen to a perfectly inane monologue that is really kind of an oral recitation of the Situation column while watching Ava be cute. And the sound doesn't work, so we do it again, and the sound does work. That's one of the revolutionary features. Another one of the revolutionary features is that every now and then I am humming along, doing a show, and John Hawkinson says in the chat, when are we talking about Andriy Yermak, or another day without an Andriy Yermak discussion? And so I text Nastya, hey, the audience is clamoring for an Andriy Yermak discussion. And Nastya shows up with no childcare, Ava in tow, and Ava is going to interrupt this show over and over and over again today, and we are all going to not merely tolerate it, we are going to enjoy it. Because that's a revolutionary feature of the show. We get Nastya with Ava, not, the de-Ava-ified Nastya that CNN gets, or that NPR gets, or whatever. We get the real Nastya with Ava. Folks, we're going to be talking about Andriy Yermak today, and some of you have never heard of Andriy Yermak. But after today, you will be experts, all of which is a long-winded way of saying, an 11-minute long-winded way of saying that we are not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to have Nastya, Ava, and Andriy Yermak here as guests today. So, Nastya, who is Andriy Yermak, and why are we talking about him?
Hi, everyone. Hopefully this works because I'm on the Starlink and I did not want to pay like $100 for the subscription. So I'm on the cheaper subscription. So my internet isn't as good as it could have been. But hopefully
You sound fabulous.
Amazing. Well, that's all thanks to all of you. Andriy Yermak is the now former, as of last Friday, former chief of staff to President Zelenskyy. So he was the head of the office of the president's office, the presidential administration. And he was in that role for nearly 6 years. He was appointed in 2020. And he became this sort of unprecedented figure because he grew an unprecedented amount of power. There has never been a chief of staff in Ukrainian history as powerful as Yermak. And he just became the symbol of sort of the dysfunction of the Ukrainian government and all things that were always and at any point wrong with the Ukrainian government and the system of governance. Yeah. Ben, do you wanna, because I guess I can run for a very long time, but do you want to give me like specific questions of how you want this to
Well,
go
so
out?
here is my question about, is Yermak really, was he really that powerful? Or was
Yes.
his power a reflection of the fact that a kind of, if only the Tsar knew, people don't like to criticize Zelensky. Zelensky's a popular figure. What was Yermak's real power?
Well, I mean, I think everyone in Ukraine kind of agrees that his power genuinely was sort of as big as unprecedented as I described. So um like I was working on a story about this for Lawfare that's going to come out hopefully on Monday, and I talked to several lawmakers, one of them from Zelensky's own party, so she, was kind of measured in her remarks. She's one of the few good lawmakers that we have, so she's obviously anti the whole thing, but she just wasn't, as kind of emotional about it. But she, for example, was saying that like he led, like, the government has a bunch of working groups on like a variety of different topics, and he personally led more than like 100 different working groups on issues ranging from like anything, like the repatriation of kidnapped kids to like some international cooperation in like anti-drug smuggling stuff, something to like something else, like tax reform, like stuff that's just, above and beyond his actual like job description, which is another thing that's like interesting to sort of think about, is like, what is actually the job of the chief of staff? Like, what is actually in the law? Like, the office of the president is not even mentioned in the Constitution. And unlike the American system of governance, where the president, it's a presidential system, so the president is kind of, again, I guess, Ben, you're going to correct me on this because I don't, my civics class was in Canada, so I didn't learn the American system. But like, if you compare sort of the presidential power between Ukraine and the US has a stronger president. Whereas we have, like, you guys have a unitary executive, we have a dual executive, and we have a what we call a parliamentary presidential system, which actually doesn't exist. It's called something else in actual political science, but we, like Ukrainians, call
It's
it,
a hybrid system.
yeah, we call it парламентсько-президентська республіка, which means that basically, and this has been kind of a long-lasting trope in like Ukrainian history, like this tension between the president and the parliament. It has always existed, and the presidents have always tried to take power away from the parliament, and then some revolution would happen, and the people would demand that the power would be with the parliament, because that's the, ultimately the most democratic kind of organ, because we elect the parliament. Anyway, so in Ukraine, the president shares his executive power with the prime minister, who's the head of the cabinet, and then there is a head of government and a head of state, and then the cabinet is responsible to the parliament, so they can do a vote of no confidence and stuff like that. All that is to make a point that the president isn't like, the president isn't supposed to have, all of this power, and the office of the president isn't supposed to be, the single most important and powerful institution in Ukraine. Just constitutionally, it's not supposed to work like that. And yet that's exactly what has been happening. And that's exactly what Yermak achieved. Now, there was his sort of rise to power coincided with several other factors. Okay, this is interesting, Ava. His rise to power coincided with two very important factors. One is that in 2019, after Zelensky got elected, his party, Servant of the People Party, won the majority, or wait, what do we call it? A supermajority in parliament. So they had, the absolute majority of seats, which meant that, they could basically do whatever they want in the parliament. So that strengthened the president to begin with. And then also the full-scale invasion began and martial law kicked in. And martial law, like under martial law, it's illegal to hold elections. You can't hold elections during martial law, which everyone agrees is actually a good thing, but that's a separate conversation. So essentially you have these two domestic factors, like just, kind of normal political factors. And then you also have this thing of like Zelenskyy appoints Yermak, who, by the way, have never had any political experience. Like he's an entertainment lawyer. Like he's a guy who like does copyright law and like co-owns firms that do movie production, and he co-produced several films. Like he had zero political experience. But then I remember when I was writing
Which is to
Wikipedia,
say he had as much political experience as Zelenskyy himself.
that is literally my opening line in my article. Where I was like, Yermak was not a traditional pick for the job, but neither was Zelenskyy after all. And I kind of like, I'm so used to Zelenskyy as a figure that it didn't occur to me immediately. And then I wrote a whole thing about how he's a movie producer, and I was like, oh wait, like our whole government are people like that. Like, okay. Anyway, so that it doesn't make it better; it makes it worse. But anyway, he like literally had no experience. He appointed him. They've been friends for years, and he immediately put him in that position. And I've gone like deep into all the reporting from that time, and the dynamic was very interesting because Yermak was essentially always in Zelenskyy's vicinity. Like he was always like just physically in the room, present, no matter what was happening. Like to a point where lawmakers or like other officials would complain to journalists that it's impossible to get a meeting with Zelenskyy without Yermak being in it. Like he was basically always there at all meetings, at all forums, like public, private, whatever. And Zelenskyy trusted him. Like they had an absolute sort of trust relationship, and Zelenskyy essentially outsourced much of the governing to him. Like Yermak did whatever Zelenskyy wanted him to do, and this is very important. Like again, it's one of those tropes that I like really dislike among like the foreign Ukraine supporters who think that they're doing like a service to Ukraine if they like whitewash Zelenskyy from responsibility. Like I think the only service you can do to anyone is if you say the truth, and the truth here is Yermak wouldn't be possible without Zelenskyy. Like it's not a if only the Tsar knew situation. Like Yermak was appointed by Zelenskyy. He got his power because Zelenskyy, gave it to him, and everything that Yermak was doing was things that Zelenskyy wanted him to do. Like there is no Yermak without Zelenskyy. He's a mirror of him in a way. And so essentially, yeah, Yermak became extremely important, and he sort of appeared out of nowhere in like the 2020, and became extremely important to a point where like no like nothing of significance, like nothing of significance in Ukraine's political system, both domestic and foreign, would happen without Yermak. And that's kind of a very broad way to say it, but a more specific way to say it is, for example, no cabinet appointment could happen without Yermak. And cabinet appointments are supposed to happen through the parliament. Like the parliament is supposed to find candidates, propose a candidate to some ministerial job to the president. The president then okays that person, which is purely ceremonial, and like that's how it works. But with Yermak, it worked the opposite way. Yermak just handpicked people, vetted them, chose them, and then they like nobody even pretended that it was the parliament's idea. Like it was just all Yermak's choosing, and the president's office controlled like basically all staffing decisions, and like lawmakers and like people in government say that openly. Like it's not a secret. It's not like a media reporting. It's like everyone knows it. So yeah, and that this was just one of the examples. And I guess it would be great if those decisions that he was making were like good decisions, but the problem is that they weren't, because a lot of these appointees who he to whom he gave a bunch of jobs, what do you want, they were either incompetent people or people from Zelenskyy's personal circle, like Yermak's friends or Zelenskyy's friends, who were then, who were then part of like various corruption scandals. a bunch of his deputies were investigated for corruption by NABU. One of them was charged for taking a bribe. So anyway, I think people get the
And
idea.
is your impression that um, the power was really Yermak's? Or is your impression that the power is really Zelensky's and it's delegated? I mean, it's not obvious to me how the presidential chief of staff seizes control of cabinet appointments from parliament. That's an institutional power grab by the presidency itself. How much of this is Zelensky seizing power and people attributing it to Yermak, and how much of it is really Yermak's power as opposed to Zelensky's power?
I think this honestly kind of gets into like, hello. Hi. Did you poop and you're now smelly? Well, that's okay. We'll ignore your poop for a little bit. I'm a good parent, I promise. Anyway, I think this gets into like kind of unhelpful semantics, or not that they're unhelpful, but like the point is Yermak was given the job by Zelensky, and Zelensky was like clearly saw what was happening and was okay with it happening. And I think, especially ever since the full-scale invasion, Zelensky just preferred to focus on like more presidential Churchillian kind of functions, like ceremonial functions. Like he would go and he would give speeches and he would, hang out with Merz and, Keir Starmer and, sort of get the support for Ukraine and lobby for international support and get, weapons and stuff like that, which is all a very important work that, we could judge whether he's good at that or not. That's a separate conversation. But he basically just outsourced all the actual other governing to Yermak. And so I don't know how, it's not that Zelensky was actually sitting there combing through documents and choosing the ministers and then just presenting it to the public as if Yermak chose it, if that's what you're asking. I don't think that's what happened.
So really what Yermak was doing was effectively being a prime minister.
I mean, he was like a co-president.
Except that, of course, Ukraine has a prime minister.
Yeah. But exactly. But Yermak was basically like a co-president or a prime minister. Sure. Yeah. The prime minister is like the second most powerful job in the country.
Right, except that nobody's ever heard of the prime minister of Ukraine, whereas Andriy Yermak is a big deal.
Moreover, the current prime minister is a protege of Yermak.
All right, so let's talk about the corruption scandal vis-a-vis Yermak. And we've had a whole other conversation about the corruption scandal, but Yermak is finally forced out because the anti-corruption police raid his house. Mm-hmm. And this is a step too far, so he resigns or is forced to resign.
He did not want. Yeah.
So help me out here. Do we know that Yermak is actually corrupt, or in addition to being a bad guy in political terms and a power grabber, is he, how directly implicated in the corruption scandal is he?
So this is interesting. So NABU, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, came to search his premises, which was really dramatic. I mean, you don't come with a search to the second most powerful figure in the country if you don't know what you're doing, right? So everyone expected that Yermak was going to be charged on that same day, and yet he hasn't yet been charged with any crime. And it's kind of an open question, like, what game is NABU playing? Is this a political move of some sort, or it's an open question why they haven't charged him yet? Because obviously, if you're coming with a search to someone who's that high in the government, you must have a solid case already. You don't dare move against Yermak until you have a case, right? So people have kind of questioned that, and there were reports that do you want to? That Zelenskyy had like meetings with NABU officials, which I mean is normal. Like there's nothing conspiratorial per se about them having a meeting, but I guess some people suggested that like they maybe like came to some deal about like how like the timing of how this is gonna go. Like maybe they agreed that like they're gonna search but like not charge him until I don't know the negotiations are over or something. Like this is all just pure guessing. Like I'm pulling this out of where. Like this is just kind of floating around. I haven't seen any actual reporting to suggest that like that's what happened. But the key point is that he has not been charged yet, and people are like unhappy about it. Like anti-corruption activists like Daria Kalinyuk like openly kind of like wondering like publicly like what is going on. But all that is to say that like it's obvious that he was implicated. I mean it's like that like there is no way in hell that he was not. Like having like that I just explained to you what his power was like there's no way a large scale corruption scheme that involves people who are his associates, like his friends, could happen without him. It's pretty much impossible. So just a matter of time until
But
that.
we don't know the manner in which he's implicated, like whether he was getting money himself or whether he was merely, for example, covering for people. It's not clear what his role, if any, was, right?
So some media investigations. So okay, wait. Backtracking a little bit. A part of the whole scheme, the corruption scheme that NABU uncovered, involved funneling the stolen money to a real estate project in Kyiv suburbs, to like a luxury, kind of like a Russian style dacha situation, which like I hate how similar it is to like the Russian thing. You know how like they would have like their cooperative, like what do they call it, ozera, where they would have like all the dachas of all the officials and they would all like live near each other and they would all have these villas. So like these officials who were involved in the scheme were kind of building something similar on a smaller scale though, and in near Kyiv, where it was like on like a riverbank. There were 5 luxury homes, and this project is still not completed. Like they're still not built, but they were like people who were involved were funneling money there to build those houses. And the
just for those
investigation.
who don't understand dacha culture, dachas are country houses are
Right.
a really important feature of
Yeah.
Eastern European, Ukrainian, Russian life.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a cultural stereotype to have a corruption scandal where you're building fancy dachas for people.
Yeah. Yeah. Share. She's so cute. I can't. Here. Anyway. So the investigation, some media investigations alleged that one of the 5 houses, the biggest one, there's like the biggest one and like 4 little ones around it, that the biggest one was for Yermak. So that's one thing. Another thing is that, which I think people have read in my newsletter, but basically when this operation, the investigation by NABU was unveiled, they released these tapes, like wiretapped conversations of people who were involved. They released some of it, but they said they have more than 1,000 hours, which is crazy. And so they haven't released any tapes with Yermak or someone who we believe is Yermak on it. But the special anti-corruption prosecutor was speaking at a press briefing, I think, or some like conference event. I think it was a briefing. And he said that even though they've already kind of announced the investigation, like some results of the investigation, that the investigation was actually still ongoing. They were still investigating people and they were still going through all the tapes. And that he said that there is a person on the tapes who's codenamed Alibaba, and that person is heard in the tapes holding meetings and like managing meetings with law enforcement agencies in Ukraine, the ones, not the NABU and SAPO, but the ones who are loyal to the president, like the prosecutor's office, the SBU, the State Security Service, and other agencies. So this Alibaba person was hosting meetings with representatives of those agencies to coordinate attacks on NABU and on NABU detectives. And so that's obviously illegal and bad. And pretty much
And
everyone,
suspected but not certain to be Yermak.
right, I was going to say, like, everyone pretty much, like, talks about it as if it's a fact of life, that this Alibaba person is Yermak because his name is Andriy Borisovich, like it's AB, his name is, and patronymic. And he's been referred to in, like, the government, like in the corridors and like in the government community. He goes by AB. And so Alibaba, like, like they really didn't make it hard with these code names. So yeah. So basically the real estate house illegal stuff, that's like one thing. And then this Alibaba coordinating attacks on NABU is another thing. But that's it in terms of like some concrete stuff that links to Yermak. There's nothing else. But everyone kind of assumes that he's involved anyway.
All right. So let's talk about post-Yermak Ukraine. This is the biggest resignation in Ukrainian government since Yanukovych was forced out in 2014. And I'm being provocative, but it's not, among other things, it's not untrue. And one of the things that you've alluded to is that Yermak has had some non-trivial constitutional implications. That is, the government literally runs differently as a result of Andriy Yermak than it did before. The presidency is a different office. Its relationship with the parliament is different. Its relationship with the so-called government, which is supposed to be a major source of power and isn't, is different. And so, whenever you remove a significant constitutional fixture of a country, you have to ask the question, how is the country going to run without him? Is it going to revert to a more, to a pre-Zelenskyy, pre-Yermak constitutional order? Is there going to have to be a new Yermak who wields all these powers that he accrued? Or is Zelenskyy himself going to have to get down in the weeds and actually run the government that he's supervised through Yermak? How does government in Ukraine work in a post-Yermak world?
So that's the big question, because of course everybody understands that simply getting rid of Yermak is not gonna be enough to magically solve all of Ukraine's problems. Like, Ukrainians are not naive. Everybody understands that. Yermak's ouster is still ultimately absolutely a positive thing, and it's great that it happened. But it's not going to be enough because, again, as you've already alluded to, there really needs to be a rethinking of the relationship between the president, the cabinet, and the parliament, and how the different branches of government carry out their functions and how that works. And it has to go back to being a healthy, normal, democratic constitutional system, where now under Yermak it really was not. And so you're already, like, it's only been like a week, so it's too late really to say anything definitively. But there has been some reporting that the government is already kind of like becoming alive again, where people are like there was even reporting on Ukrainska Pravda that Zelenskyy himself seems a lot more energized, that like he and people around him are kind of like enthusiastic, that like, okay, let's turn the page, like let's be normal again. Like, people are kind of excited about it. The parliament is supposedly also kind of like finding its footing, because the several ministers were fired because of the corruption scandal, the energy minister and the minister of justice, and they haven't been replaced yet. And so supposedly right now, the lawmakers are in the process of like scouting for candidates and vetting the candidates and suggesting the candidates to the president's office, which is like a process that hasn't happened in years. Like the parliament hasn't done this stuff in years. And it's the first time since before the full-scale invasion that the office of the president isn't deciding this. That Zelenskyy is just dealing with his own stuff. He's looking for a new chief of staff. Like he has that job. And the parliament is running around like trying to find candidates.
I volunteered to be the chief of
Minister
staff.
of Justice.
No. I volunteered to be chief of staff. I think I'm very well qualified. My Ukrainian is terrible. And so therefore I'm not subject to all kinds of pressures that somebody who actually speaks the language could be subject to. I have unique experience with projectors. So to the extent that the president needs to project an image, I'm very good at that. And I'm really above politics in Ukraine. So I think I'm well qualified. And I posted this on Blue Sky that I was prepared to be the new Andriy Yermak. And as Nastya knows, somebody responded with a blistering attack on me that the demise of Yermak was a disaster for Ukraine, and this was a great. Yeah, and so I just want to say I'm here. I'm ready. Ready to serve.
Okay. I will try to get that information to whoever needs to hear it.
Yeah, which is like many people need to hear this.
But
so
Zelenskyy. Yeah, go ahead.
What is the right model for? I mean, if you're Zelenskyy, and let's imagine for a minute that Zelenskyy is a good-hearted but flawed person who has the hardest job in the world, right? He's got to manage a war. He's got to manage Donald Trump, who's his main backer in the war, but is also cutting side deals through Steve Witkoff with Vladimir Putin. He's got to keep the Europeans as a backup. He's got a fairly unruly domestic politics. He does unruly, fractious. People are upset with him about all kinds of things. It's the hardest.
Yeah,
it's the hardest job in the world, and he needs help. Clearly, the fact that he had Yermak in the first place is a reflection of the fact that he needs help. And people want a return to some degree of constitutional normalcy. And so what are the options that he has regarding leaving aside names? What is the sort of person who should run the presidential office for Zelenskyy?
It depends on what message you want to send, right? Because there are, of course, names that have been floated around, and he's considered a number of current ministers, and they all kind of have their own like personas and different kind of quirks, and appointing any one of them is going to send a different message. So I mean, yeah, I guess it just depends on, whether he wants a person who can really take care of, but again, like that I was going to say take care of like the domestic politics inside of it, but like that sounds too Yermak-ish, and I don't even remember at the time when like that wasn't happening.
Right. I mean, so like one possible model is you say, I've got to run a war, and I've got to run foreign policy, and I've got to deal with Trump and the Europeans and the negotiations. I need somebody to do everything else, right? But then you've just recreated Andriy Yermak. You've
But
just, I
that's
mean,
also not true. The premise that he himself needs to deal with all of these things, like there is a Ministry of Foreign Affairs that's like a real institution that has a minister whose job includes diplomacy and dealing with Trump, and like Zelenskyy is not like a lone wolf or a soldier alone in the middle of a field. Avachka, I know you don't give a shit about any of this, but it's kind of important.
Avachka,
Babunchik.
Ava.
So yeah, I mean, like he has like people who can take responsibility over things, qualified people who can do things. So yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of like decentralizing power and letting institutions and people who know what they're doing just do the job, like just trusting that other people can do the job and not centralizing it around one person and then him Zelensky. So the front runners for the job, and he's supposed to announce it today, which is why I've been checking my phone during this recording because it's evening time. So his like usual evening address time is like kind of coming up, but he hasn't yet announced it. The front runners are actually like surprisingly good. Avachka, stop. The front runners are actually pretty good. So one of them is Denis Shmyhal, who is Ukraine's former prime minister. He was the longest serving prime minister in Ukraine's history. He was the prime minister for almost 6 years. And he is right now the minister of defense. He replaced Umerov. I don't even know what to say about him. He's kind of boring, to be honest. But he seems just like a good, normal manager. There haven't been any huge corruption scandals, but he's not notable for anything particular, except I guess the fact that he's just like a clean-ish like figure, which is good for a cabinet member. That's great. But a much more interesting person who's also in the run is Mikhailo Fedorov, who's the Minister of Digital Transformation, who's this young prodigy kind of guy who's like the most liked cabinet member because he runs all of the cool like digital transformation shit. Like his team built the Ukrainian Dia app, like the app that we have for all the government services, where we have like our passport and we can like order documents just in an app on an iPhone. It's super cool stuff. Ukraine is like one of the only countries in the world that has that stuff. So
Yeah,
he
and
runs.
it was created. I interviewed his deputy once for the Lawfare
Oh,
podcast.
really? Okay.
But and it was all created, during the early days of the full-scale invasion when, the large numbers of Ukrainians were suddenly leaving the country and needed ways
Wait,
to
we
get.
had Dia before.
I'm sorry?
I think we had Dia before the full-scale invasion.
Yeah, but a huge amount of material was moved to be accessible from it
Oh,
in,
yeah, right, right,
in
right. They added services rapidly. Yes.
because people needed services and they were suddenly all over the world. And
Right,
I
right.
think there was a lot of Estonian help in this because the
Yeah.
Estonians are the great masters of digital government. But it was a major, major accomplishment, and
Yes.
they did a remarkable job with it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the
So
amount of
that's Fedorov. And
so
so that would be super cool, I think, because he's like, I don't even think he's 40 yet. Like he kind of seems just very young and cool and progressive, and he's well liked and like no, uh, wait, no corruption scandals. Okay, he's like posting photos with a bunch of officials, but none of them are about the appointment of a new chief of staff. It's very annoying. Anyway, so yeah, that would be cool. That would be a great signal, I think, if he appoints Fedorov.
all
Because
right, so guys, we have 13 minutes. If any of you have questions about Andriy Yermak, the political crisis, Ava is waiting to answer them. Ava, who was unimpressed by the stuffed dog, I want to say.
The stuffed dog? What?
Yeah, look at the screen.
Oh, well, you're barely moving. We have a connection problem. So I have no idea if you're showing anything.
Oh, you
You're
don't see the stuffed dog?
I I mean I do not see any stuffed animal. I just see
Oh,
you moving your mouth very slowly because there is a delay.
well, right in front of my face, at some point, you will see the stuffed dog. Um,
I just
which, for those who are asking in the chat,
Oh, now I
I
can see it. I
I
was
did
hoping
not bring a stuffed dog on the trip.
there was
The dog leapt off the dog shirt. Um, no, I did not bring a stuffed dog on the on the trip. The stuffed dog lives in this hotel room and is for sale. And I do not buy stuffed dogs from hotels, but I do use the available ones to entertain toddlers remotely when they're available. Um, so, guys, particularly John Hawkinson, who ordered up this show, join us with your questions. Ava is sitting there patiently waiting. And yeah, I believe the dog is also available for questions. Um, Andrew asks a question I don't think we know the answer to. Will Yermak be prosecuted and will Zelenskyy possibly pardon him?
That's an interesting question. I don't even know if we have the presidential pardon thing. Like, I don't
There is a pardon
have that.
available, I believe.
We've been discussing it in the chat, in fact, yes. It's
Did
not
someone
available to the acting president, but it is available to the president.
John, what is your question?
Well, first of all, I've only been in and out. You can tell I'm not in my usual environment, despite a similar zoning map behind me. But I don't have a good sense of what's actually happened in the past 7 days.
uh and like in terms of what exactly? Just
Well,
general government work?
and who's filling the position that
No.
Yermak filled, and what actions have they taken?
Well, so like Yermak left on last Friday. Nobody has filled in his shoes yet. Like that's why we're waiting for the replacement to be appointed today. Zelensky
But
was
so no
barely.
one is doing those. Is Zelensky himself doing those things, or are the people beneath him doing those
I mean,
tasks?
maybe his deputies. I don't know.
We're not
Probably
sure.
there was never who was like appointed acting Yermak. If that's what you're asking, like that doesn't exist. Uh, but yeah, Zelensky was barely in the country. He went. I think he went to France. He met with Macron. He had like a bunch of Europe meetings, and he came back maybe yesterday. So that's why this appointment is taking a little longer. But the parliament voted for a budget, which is a terrible budget, but they voted for it anyway. Um, what else? There was some other stuff, but it's kind of a long story to explain. One, but it's kind of interesting. So there was this detective from NABU, the anti-corruption agency, who supposedly played a key role in this investigation that, you know, unveiled this energy corruption scheme. He was prosecuted and put into pre-trial detention, this detective and his father, in a case that, like, everyone understands to be politically motivated, that it was just Yermak sort of going after the detective who's trying to go after him. And that detective was in pretrial detention, even though they're like the case is groundless. There's no reason to be in there. And so the day before yesterday, or yesterday, I forgot when that was, but like just if like in the last 48 hours, he was released. Uh, and so the case is still open, but he's out of like he doesn't have Ben. What's the word? Like he doesn't have any like measure. He isn't wearing a bracelet. He isn't at home arrest. Like he's just um, and so it's kind of interesting. Like the timing is kind of curious that like it hasn't even been a week since Yermak is out, and now this detective is out too, which probably tells you something about the relationship between Yermak and the law enforcement agencies, like, prosecuted him in the first place. So.
I have a ridiculous question before I leave, which is every time you say Naboo, I think of the planet from Star Wars where Padme Amidala comes from. And I'm just
I've never
wondering if
seen
culturally,
Star Wars,
okay,
which is going to be
you
crazy.
don't think of that culturally in Ukraine. Well, it's you have to get to the fourth movie, also known as the seventh movie or whatever, in order to get there. But fair enough.
Yeah, I know nothing about the Star Wars universe. Hi, Matt.
Matt,
Ben, it's always nice to have you in this time zone. Welcome. I hope you come here often.
yeah, it prevents you from having to get up at 5 in the morning. It's great to see you. It's also honestly great to be doing a show at 8 rather than at 5 in Pacific time.
Yes, it is. My world.
What's on your mind?
I don't know how good a question this is, but I keep wondering, not knowing much about Ukrainian politics, what's Yermak's continued influence going to be now he's gone? Assuming he's not in jail or something, is he just going to go off into the night and never be heard from again, or is he going to continue to be like an influential figure behind the scenes?
It's a great question. I mean, this is a figure of enormous political significance over the last 4 years. Does he just fade away, or does he become some sort of behind the scenes eminence grise, or what happens to Andriy Yermak?
Yeah, that's another really good question. I think knowing how our civil, okay, she's losing it. Do you want a little sosisechka? Do you want a sausage? Let me give her sausage. Give me a second. I need to put something in her mouth.
There is
For those who want a brief Ukrainian lesson, in all things Ukrainian, you add ichka or chka to the end in order to make it a diminutive, and so to make it sound cute or little. And so what Ava just got was not a sausage; it was like a little cute sausage.
It's a sosisechka. Yes.
A sosisechka. Yeah, I can't even say that.
Anyway, that's again another really good question, whether he's gonna retain any power. The challenge here is that his power wasn't just like in him as one person. Like, he had probably hundreds of associates in all sorts of places, like I don't know, heads of the tax service, heads of the border guard, whatever. Like it's just officials everywhere in literally every government agency. There are people who are tied with him one way or the other. It's an open question. Like, obviously you can't go into some sort of witch hunt, like Red Scare style of like firing all the Yermak people. Like, you're not going to do that. It's an open question how those people are going to be acting now that he's out, right? Like, we don't really know what the loyalty there is. For example, the general prosecutor, totally a Yermak person. He's like this young prosecutor who was appointed just to be like a hand, like a manual kind of rule kind of prosecutor who's going to do whatever you want him to do. But in the last few weeks, a few days before they came to search Yermak's house, Yermak was going on an offensive, purportedly, trying to like go after all the people who are like trying to get rid of him, and he supposedly pressured the head of the SBU, Maluk, and the general prosecutor to sign treason charges to the lawmakers who were demanding for Yermak's fire, which would be like ridiculous shit. Like, people would probably protest over it. Like, it would be black and white kind of, what are you doing, right? Like, you cannot accuse lawmakers of treason for demanding them the firing of Yermak. So reportedly, he was pressuring them to do it. But this is an interesting part of the Ukrainian kind of fucked up system of governance. neither the SBU nor the general prosecutor agreed to do that. Like, they thought that was like a step too far. And even this guy who was a handpicked prosecutor by Yermak was like, I'm not going to do this shit. And I'm not saying they're actually like great, honorable people. Like, no, this prosecutor is terrible. He was behind the attack on Nabo in the summer. Like, he's a terrible guy. He was only doing that because he knew that Yermak is going to be out one way or the other. He's still going to be a prosecutor, and the people are still going to be coming for him, you know? So he was saving his own ass. So, but that's beside the point. The point is that we don't know how these associates of Yermak are going to be acting now, because like, they're not just brainwashed loyal servants, right? Like, they have their own interests. They, you know, may decide that now, you know, they're going to do something else. So it's an open question. But I also think I don't believe that Yermak is going to be able to retain power, because his downfall is just too big and too dirty and like looks too bad. First of all, for Zelenskyy to let him keep the power. Like, I don't think Zelenskyy is stupid. Like, he kind of finally sees, like, you know, how big of a kind of cancer Yermak was for him. But then also, this is not a kind of thing that goes unnoticed in this country. Like, journalists are spying on everybody in government. I'm not even kidding. Like, investigative journalists go around following cars of like ministers and whatever, like looking at which restaurant they're dining in and who they're going to visit for birthday parties. Like, if Yermak retains his influence, people are gonna know about it. Like, there's no way it goes unnoticed, and it's gonna be a huge problem, which is why I think it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely. Moreover, there was also reporting that Yermak didn't expect the ouster, and he didn't expect that Zelenskyy is going to get rid of him. And Ukrainska Pravda reported, based on anonymous sources, of course, and all of that, that Yermak basically turned hysterical and like screamed at Zelenskyy for like 30 minutes. Basically, like, how could you do this to me? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, they had like a real fallout. Like, it was like a, you know, like they were close friends, the closest, the bestest BFFs, and Zelenskyy got rid of him, and Yermak took it very personal. All of that is also to say that, like, how are they going to repair that now? And like, and why, you know? So,
and also the fundamental principle that there is nobody deader than a dead pope is, you know, is operative here. You know, this is a fall, and
like, yeah, bad.
All right, folks, we are going to wrap up because, you know, Ava needs a diaper change and has been extremely patient with you all, not to mention with me. Bye, Ava. And we are going to be back on Monday. You know, I don't know who the co-hosts are going to be. We got some great guests coming up next week. We got Linda Chervinsky coming, I believe, on Tuesday. It's going to be a blast. And it is going to be, it's all going to happen. And you know, on Monday, I don't know who the co-hosts are going to be. I don't know who the guests are going to be. I'm going to be back at home in my chair. Ava's going to be hanging out with me, right, Ava? No, I'm just full of shit. It's okay. We're going to be back. It's going to be great. You'll be there. I'll be there. Papa.